and thank you for listening to the new Inquirer.net podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, Emil, a columnist for Inquirer.net, and your host of this show. This is the show where we'll try to bring you Filipino voices wherever they may be in North America, people who are doing something worth noting with a story to tell. And today, our second part of our interview with Philippine Consul General of San Francisco, Henry Bensurto Jr. It's a frank conversation about the rise of nationalism in the Philippines, extrajudicial killings, violence in the Philippines, Duterte's Trump invite, and more on Independence Day. People in San Francisco know Henry Bensurto Jr. simply as Con.Gen. We continue our conversation where he is the official voice of the Philippines for San Francisco and most of the West, and we spoke to him initially about the irony of the Independence Day celebration taking place in San Francisco's Union Square. Union Square, which is the home of a monument that represents the polar opposite of Philippine independence. Indeed, the monument is the negation of the spirit of independence. While the people do the Tinikling on temporary stages, a monument looks down on the proceedings from on high, honoring Admiral George Dewey and President William McKinley. Dewey, you'll recall, won the victory of Manila Bay that led to the victory of the Spanish-American War, which, of course, led to the colonization of the Philippines by the U.S. McKinley, he's the guy who pressed for an imperial America. So on the day we honor Emilio Aguinaldo, who established the first Philippine Republic and led to the Philippine-U.S. War and its immoral number of Filipino casualties, we must ask this question. Is Union Square really the right place to celebrate this day? I mean, who would turn more in their graves at the thought of the revelers at Union Square? Freedom-loving Aguinaldo and all his fighters, or the statue's imperial honorees, Dewey and McKinley? I asked Bensurto about that irony. Bensurto was a true diplomat. Listen to his answer on this podcast. We also talked about the importance of Independence Day in general and how we should view what is clearly a move toward a more nationalistic Philippines. I then asked Bensurto how Filipinos in America should view the extrajudicial killings going on there and the acts of violence which polls say the people in the Philippines fear. I asked him if any families here have contacted him about the safety of families there. We end up talking about Duterte and the recent invitation by President Trump of a possible visit here to the U.S., and how the consulate has established ambassador tours to increase American Filipinos' awareness of what is happening back home. Listen now to part 2 of my conversation with Philippine Consul General of San Francisco, Henry Bensurto Jr.
Well, I would put it this way, Emil. Independence is not just about the birth of a nation. Independence is also about the struggle of a nation to be able to survive as a nation state and to develop as a nation state so that it's able to provide for its people. As it goes through with that struggle, and I would like to emphasize the word struggle. Struggle essentially is an effort on the part of us as a people to essentially grapple with realities, overcome difficulties, go through those bad experiences so that hopefully after those bad experiences we're able to learn and be able to chart our history in the future in a much better way. And all of these experiences, bad or good, add up to where we are right now. They are not necessarily good experiences, but even bad experiences, we can always say, even as individuals, are things that constitute or that make us who we are right now. We like it or we don't. It is part of our own humanity now. That is part of who we are. And we try to use that experience to help us overcome same situations and to make us wiser. And so I look at that particular moment in our history as one building block in, 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 in that larger picture of a nation state trying to grow up. And when you look at our history in the context of other nation states, we're a very young country. We still have a lot to learn, and we continue to learn, and we continue to improve. And so that part of our history uh, may not be the best experience we have, but it is something that we have to face up with and try to take out the good points that we can learn from that. Because I believe in every experience that they will always have something positive, and it's up to us now to take out what are the positive things that we can out of that experience. And so this is how I look at it, and I'm not afraid to face that particular point in our history, and have an open mind in terms of how it has contributed in my own development as an individual, in our development as a community, and also as a nation state. And so right there, we're able to be courageous enough, to be mature enough, to face ourselves, to face our fears, our anxieties, and overcome them as individuals and as a community. But the other point here also, Emil, that I'd like to add up to is that Union Square, geographically, somehow constitutes the very center of San Francisco, aside from the City Hall, of course. And it is therefore very symbolic for us to be able to hold our activity in the center of this community, because it represents our ability to be of that class, of that level, that we are not afraid, that we can compete, that we are proud, and how good it is that we're able to uh, celebrate this event right in the very center of this nice and beautiful city.
There is a statue there that has been a sore point among some Filipinos. But to your point, it's all part of where, brings us to where we are now. And where we find the Philippines now is we see a very strong sense of nationalism that's come up, and it's represented in President Duterte. How do you assess this nationalistic streak that we now see? Is that a good thing? Is that what do you tell Filipino Americans who are here and away from the Philippines? You're the top official from the Philippines. When people ask you about Duterte and the nationalism that they see and read about, what do you tell them about where the Philippines is right now?
Well, we always say, and this is something that I've learned also from my experience, that there's a distinction between nationalism and patriotism. Unfortunately, nationalism has gotten a bad connotation of you know quite synonymous to xenophobia, that you love everything your own and hate the rest. I think what we have to encourage is patriotism, the love for country without hating others, and patriotism is something, a very good quality that Filipinos, wherever they are, can always learn and exert effort to acquire, because patriotism is an acquired character, is an acquired virtue, and as a virtue, it is something that we have to exert effort to keep on repeating. And we're able to keep on repeating this virtue of patriotism by continuously exercising it as a matter of habit. And this is something that we'd like all Filipinos, wherever they are, uh, to continue acquiring that love of the country. They may have a different citizenship now, but that Filipino heritage is there right in their heart, and we want to spark that. And that's why in the context of our work here in the consulate, we have always we have always adhered to these three mission thrusts that we have: spark, connect, and empower. And that is precisely what we want to do. We want to spark that Filipino spirit, spark that curiosity among our millennials, among our youth, spark that interest so that out of that curiosity, they will not be afraid to go into a journey of discovering that heritage. And we're not afraid for them to discover that heritage. We are quite confident that as they discover that heritage, they slowly understand who they are, and they slowly understand where they come from. And by that realization, they're able to connect and with others of similar situation. And by doing so, they're able to empower themselves as an individual and as a community. And it starts with that love. It starts with that patriotism. It starts it starts with their love for their country, for where they come from. And when I say for that country, I don't try to narrow it down in the context of citizenship, because citizenship is a narrow way of defining this. But I put it in the context of a heritage that you can have different citizenship, but that heritage of being anchored on that place where your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors come from, and from which you draw a lot of your character, of your values, of your mindset, of how you look at things. That is going to be part of who you are and how you develop as a person in a different environment, in the new circumstances you find. And so this is what we're trying to spark among all Filipinos. And going back to your question of how do I explain, I put it along those terms of love for country, a love for that heritage. And this can be done uh, you know regardless of your political beliefs, because this is what unifies us, that heritage of being a Filipino. And that's non-partisan. That's just being pure and simple Filipino.
Well, I certainly understand that. Being, both my parents are Filipino, and my being born here, I understand what you're saying. There are also people who are dual citizens, and they might see the news, they might see the term, Philippine nationalism, and they see what Duterte is doing in the news. What do you tell them? Uh, Not in a, to when they have questions about maybe some conflicts, like they read about the drug war and they read about the extrajudicial killings. What do you tell people who are both American citizens and dual citizens about whether if they feel a conflict between what they are reading in that's going on in the Philippines, and they feel uneasy? What is your response to them?
Well, first, I think it's very natural, and I think I would like to perhaps emphasize that Filipinos may disagree on several points, and when people have questions, maybe it's good for them to uh, dig deeper and try to understand, withhold judgment until they have all information in their hands. And at the end of the day, there will be differences of perspectives and opinion. But from our end here, we wish to emphasize what unifies us as a nation, rather than what divides us. And this is what we're trying to emphasize. There will always be differences of opinion, and there will always be differences in terms of political perspectives, because this is how humanity is built in. It's a matter. It's our nature. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of every human being to have their own opinion of every matter there, and you will always see this. And and what is important, however, is beyond those political partisan perspectives, that we're able to overcome that and look beyond what divides us and focus on what unites us as Filipinos. Because at the end of the day, uh, you know, um, governments will come and go, but your character and your heritage as a Filipino will always be there. And we want also this to be channeled in a more positive way. That regardless of one's political perspectives, one should always ask himself, regardless of your political opinion, how can you serve and how can you help your country so that you're able to shape and influence it in the direction where you think everybody will prosper and that the country will develop. If we're able to channel our energy along those lines, then I think that's going to be good for all of us. Uh,
Yeah. Now, ConGen, I noticed that one of the things that you do at the consulate is that when bodies or when people are dead or when they pass away here in the United States and they want to be buried in the Philippines, you facilitate that. And so I know you do all these personal things for Filipinos here. I was wondering, do you have Filipinos here in America who are concerned either about relatives who might have been caught up in extrajudicial killings or who are concerned at all about what's going on back there in terms of the safety, in the cities and in the provinces?
well, here in the consulate, we have not received any inquiry to that extent. None that I'm aware of, actually. So short
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering about that because many people here still have relatives there, and they're regular Filipinos involved in Philippine life, and so I thought maybe that may come up, but certainly if there was someone there, you would intercede and help them be in touch with their relatives.
well, it is our duty to facilitate and to help Filipinos here in whatever way we can, either by way of information or in some other ways or forms. And to the extent that we're able to, we will. That is our call and that is our mission. And so we will do that. But going back to the point of, uh, of, of information about the Philippines, I think one must be able to pierce through what is available uh, in terms of the information that information can always be put out there using various platforms, and for as long as it goes through certain process, that platform truth will always be presented from that particular angle. And so what we try to encourage for people is, since you are exercising freedom, we encourage, therefore, for people to use their freedom to go beyond what they read. We encourage people to come and visit the Philippines and see for themselves exactly what it is that is happening there, as opposed to what they read. By definition, a write-up will always have a limitation. It can, and rightly or wrongly, but this is physics also, it can only capture certain aspects of a reality. And that aspect of reality may not represent the entire reality. So what we try to encourage, therefore, people to do is to go beyond uh, that particular box captured or encapsulated in a very specific particular magazine or newspaper that they have, and try to go beyond that, because there are other ways of experiencing truth and reality. Of course, when I say that reality, there's not one reality. It can be, this is experiential to a large extent. But to that extent, therefore, we encourage people to go calm and immerse themselves and experience actually what it is to be in the Philippines. Then, in that sense,
There was a story not long ago, within the last week or two, where the social weather station's poll said that people were actually scared of being accidentally shot. And because of the kind of aggressive actions in the drug war. And I was just wondering, as the consul general here in the Bay Area, can you say to the people who are considering the Philippines for travel or for fun or for business, is it really better in the Philippines? Is it safe in the Philippines?
Yes, yes, as yes, Emil. The answer to that is yes, and a big yes. Uh, all caps letters. In fact, um, we have this program, Ambassadors Tour, that will happen sometime in July, and we're inviting Filipino Americans to actually experience Philippines by being there. And we're not just encouraging the first or second generation Filipino Americans, but we're encouraging this generation of uh, Filipino Americans to bring in the younger generation so that Filipino Americans who would be part of the trip would be able to experience in a very real way, in an experiential way, what the situation in the Philippines is, and therefore to that degree, we're able to narrow down perception and reality. And there's no better way of explaining reality than actually by experiencing it, because if one is going to limit reality in the context of one survey or one article, obviously that by itself is a constraining factor in the presentation of reality. So we want to encourage people what it is by being there themselves, and therefore I go back to the point that yes, it's very good to come and visit the Philippines. And this is the reason why we have this program called the Ambassadors Tour. And we want to encourage Filipino Americans to rediscover their Filipino roots, and to actually experience what it is to be in the Philippines by experiencing in a very real, actual way the place, the people, the cuisine, the culture. And so that ambassadors tour is not just limited to Manila. We hope to bring, and part of the program is to bring people outside of Manila also, to be more specific, bring them also to Davao and to see Davao for themselves, and to withhold judgment until such time that they're able to see the place, and once in the place, then they would now be in a better position to make their own judgment based on their actual experience.
So people should maybe take advantage of the ambassadors tour, but just recently, President Duterte has been invited by President Trump to visit the White House. Is this a breakthrough? And do you know when President Duterte might visit Washington D.C.?
I think the president. What we know of is that the President Trump invited President Duterte, but we have no information as to the decision of President Duterte whether to come or not. I think that is something that he has yet to decide. But I think from the perspective of the fact that the U.S. president invited the Philippine president, I think is something positive, especially in the context of the experience leading into this. We all know that prior to this invitation, there has been some misunderstanding in terms of that relations, and I think it is Philippines and U.S. are allies, and therefore the best way to kind of uh, erase or clear the air, so to speak, is for our leaders to be together and actually experience each other, and hear from each other their own opinion and their own perspectives. Uh, there is no substitute to an actual dialogue, to an actual conversation between and among people. As they said, and I've always um, understood this to be a very good point, a very good principle in terms of learning history. That when you look at the history of wars and peace, many of these wars have been fought because of cultural misunderstanding, and so it is therefore good to overcome these constraints, these physical barriers, and for us to make use of the technology of transport, to be able to dialogue and engage each other, and we should not be afraid to do that. So, from that perspective, I think it's something that's very good, especially looking at the larger picture of the Philippines and the United States. We must be able to overlook, uh, uh, you know, the constraints of existing administrations and be able to emphasize what it is that pull us together as good friends, as brothers, and it is this relationship. It is this people-to-people relationship also among Filipino Americans who are here and Americans who are back in the Philippines, to be that gravitational pull for these two countries to be together, and it is that which has a lot of strategic implications in terms of the future direction of our two countries.
ConGen, do you see that the Philippines has maybe a strategic role because the invitation came in the wake of discussions about North Korea? Do you think that the Philippines plays a strategic role in the U.S.-North Korean relationship?
I think I would even look at it from this perspective. The fact that US and the Philippines are allies, and when I say allies, not in a very theoretical way, but in a very real, actual way, not only in the context of our shared history, but from the perspective even of our mutual defense treaty, our close linkage in terms of our two economies, in terms of our people-to-people relations. Even from that perspective, it is very, very natural. In fact, it is very imperative for the two leaders to get together and to dialogue, irrespective of the recent meetings in Manila, irrespective of the strategic importance of the two countries to each other. The fact that we have that close relationship, uh, 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 I think, makes it imperative for the two governments, especially that they are newly installed, to come and get together and engage. Because if our relations as a nation state, if we are going to deepen and broaden that, we have to make sure that our leaders are able to engage with each other.
Philippine Consul General of San Francisco, Henry Bensurto Jr. My conversation with him about Independence Day and a variety of subjects, and incidentally, the interview was conducted before martial law was declared in Mindanao. Otherwise, I would have asked him about that for sure. And that's it for our program. Your feedback at www.amok.com. Go there and find yourself clicking on SpeakPipe if you want to leave a verbal message. If it's clean, hey, we might put it on the air. Send any suggestions you might have for possible interview subjects to amok.com. We'll have a lot more next time. Share the link and subscribe on iTunes. We should be available on iTunes. And for the news of the Philippines and the global Filipino communities, go to www.inquirer.net. And that's where you'll find my column, Emil Amok. I'm Emil Guillermo. This is the Inquirer.net podcast, a production of Emil Guillermo Media.